he looked like nobody. Just a janitor with a mop and a coffee cup, invisible in a room full of elite Navy SEAL candidates. But when recruit Jacob Rios spotted the strange black patch on the old man's sleeve, no colors, no unit, just a ghostly eagle, everything changed. One glance, one question, and the silence around that man cracked open a hidden world of forgotten heroes, unspeakable missions, and a legacy buried deeper than classified files. This wasn't just a veteran, this was Signal, and his story isn't written in history books, it's whispered in the shadows. Subscribe now. You won't believe who's still fighting wars you'll never hear about. Naval Special Warfare Assessment Center, Coronado. The air felt like it was holding its breath. Rows of young men in fresh PT gear shifted in stiff chairs, backs straight, nerves sharper than their haircuts. The room hummed under flickering fluorescence, the tick of the wall clock louder than the conversations it smothered. Most recruits kept to themselves, locked in that quiet calculation of who looked like they'd make it and who didn't. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Everyone was trying not to blink first. In the far corner of the waiting room, beneath a peeling recruitment poster, sat an old man no one had seen enter. Olive, drab jacket, frayed at the elbows. A ball cap perched low over weathered features, sweat-stained and coffee-spattered, its bill curled by time. He looked like a memory someone had misplaced in a room that only knew ambition. His hands rested on a styrofoam cup, the liquid inside long gone lukewarm. He hadn't touched it in an hour. Probably waiting on a grandson, one recruit muttered. A few others glanced his way, shrugged. Old vets came through here sometimes. Retired brass visiting. Uncles with stories no one could verify. They didn't ask questions. Not when the man didn't move, didn't speak, didn't seem to notice the low buzz of testosterone and nerves orbiting around him. Just stared at the floor, or maybe past it. Most looked away. All but one. Jacob Rios sat 2 seats down, postured tight. Every inch of him tuned like a wire about to snap. But his eyes kept drifting sideways, to the man's sleeve. There was a patch there, barely visible through the folds and wear. No colors, just black on olive stitching, sharp and geometric. An eagle, maybe. But not the standard SEAL trident, not any unit insignia Rios recognized. It looked old, older than even the man wearing it. His curiosity sparked quietly. Not the loud kind that makes you talk. The kind that makes you wonder. The kind that doesn't let go. Rios opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know why, but something told him not to ask yet. Not here. The old man shifted slightly in his seat. Just enough to make the patch catch the overhead light. Just enough to let it be seen. And for the first time since stepping into Coronado, Jacob Rios felt like he was the one being evaluated. Jacob Rios wasn't the kind to get distracted. Not by noise, not by nerves, not even by the pressure cooking off the walls of the assessment center like heat shimmer on a rifle barrel. At 24, he'd trained his body into quiet violence, efficient, lean, exact. Every step deliberate, every glance calculated. But that patch, that damn patch had wormed its way into his focus and refused to leave. It wasn't regulation, wasn't familiar. No trident, no anchor, no Latin motto curled under some proud animal. Just an angular eagle stitched in dark thread, wings shaped like geometry, talons curled around nothing. The lines were precise, almost mechanical, like it meant something beyond symbol, like it was code. During the next break, recruits filtered out toward the vending machines or took knee in silence. Rios didn't move at first. He watched the old man again. Same chair, same unreadable stillness, sipping coffee that had no business being warm anymore. The man hadn't blinked in 20 minutes, hadn't spoken to anyone. Rios rose anyway, step after step, careful. He kept the tone light, almost apologetic. "Sir," he said, stopping a polite 2 feet away, "I couldn't help noticing that patch on your—" The old man didn't look up, just lifted the cup to his lips, drank slow. The room buzzed in the distance. Conversations, machines, clatter. But around this man it felt like the air had stopped. Then, slowly, deliberately, the man turned his head. His eyes weren't tired, they weren't old. They were sharp, watchful, not suspicious, assessing. Like he was flipping through pages in Rios's soul, looking for something buried deep. "You ever been inside an op?" the man said, voice like someone who had swallowed smoke and gravel and come out colder for it. "Before it had a name?" The words weren't a question. Not really. They were a gate. One Rios wasn't cleared to walk through. He stood frozen, throat dry, every follow-up dying in the space between them. The old man turned back to his cup, and that was it. No explanation. No welcome. Just silence. But it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that meant something. And Jacob Rios had no idea what it meant yet, only that it mattered. By nightfall, the old man had become a story. Back in the barracks, where steel bunks and whispered bravado filled the air, speculation spread like smoke. Nobody knew his name, and that made him dangerous, or entertaining, depending on who you asked. "That guy?" one recruit said, unwrapping an energy bar with more confidence than rank. "He ran ghost teams back in the 80s. Black ops, deep stuff, no uniforms, no rules. Or he's just some busted-up vet who thinks this is a VA clinic," another shot back, drawing laughter from a few. But not everyone joined in. Some kept quiet. Some remembered the way he looked at Rios, like he was measuring bone and soul, and decided that wasn't a man you mocked. That was a man you survived near. The patch photo was already making rounds. Taken discreetly, shared eagerly. Fuzzy, angled, but clear enough to raise eyebrows. No insignia matched, not within known units. Not even the rare commemorative designs seals sometimes passed hand to hand like secret currency. Just that dark eagle. Sharp wings, no perch. It stared back from the photo like it had seen more than you ever would. Rios sat on his bunk, staring at the image, thumb hovering over the screen like touching it might trigger something. A feeling gnawed at him. Not curiosity exactly, but something deeper. That man hadn't moved much, hadn't spoken much, but the room bent around him. Gravity without mass. Volume without voice. He took the image to Chief Petty Officer Harding during chow. Figured the man had seen everything twice, and once blindfolded. Harding looked once, then again. His jaw set like he was biting down on something he couldn't spit out. "Where'd you get this?" Rios hesitated. Old guy at the intake center said something weird about ops without names. The chief's expression hardened. "You didn't see that patch." "Chief, you didn't talk to that man, and you sure as hell don't ask again." The words were low, but laced with weight. Not threat. Warning. Like standing near a cliff and being told not to look down. Rios pocketed the phone. Said nothing. But silence, he was learning, didn't mean mystery died. It meant something buried was starting to stir. The old man was back the next morning. Same corner, same chair, same coffee, half drunk and forgotten. The recruits were herded in again, nerves tight, eyes forward, pretending not to look at him but failing, especially Rios. Only this time, he wasn't just sitting, he was sweeping. A wide push broom slid across the tile outside the training intake room, slow and steady. He moved with no rush, no noise, no wasted motion. No name tag, no ID, no clipboard or watch to pretend importance. Just that worn olive jacket and a pair of old boots that looked like they'd seen jungle mud and desert grit and still hadn't given up. To most, he was invisible. Just another aging custodian shuffling along the periphery of ambition. But Rios was watching closely now. And he noticed things. The old man's posture didn't slouch, it settled. His eyes didn't wander, they tracked. And the way he held that broom, hands loose, thumbs wrapped low, elbows relaxed, it wasn't how someone swept. It was how someone kept their rifle close without looking like they were holding one. He was trained, no doubt about it. And not just trained, but drilled. Lived in discipline. Quiet muscle memory. Recruits came and went. Officers passed. But when instructors moved near the old man, something shifted. They didn't speak to him, but their pace changed, their tone lowered. A few gave him a nod. Not the polite kind, not casual acknowledgement, but something deeper. Respect laced with history. One instructor, Senior Chief Barnes, known for grinding egos into dust, caught sight of the old man leaning against a mop handle and muttered something under his breath. Not an insult. Sounded almost like "sir." Rios clocked it. Others didn't. No one questioned why a janitor sat in on eval briefings, or why he stood silently behind the instructors during the endurance evaluations, arms crossed, watching like he was cataloging more than reps or laps. And the weirdest part, nobody told him to leave. No one gave orders. It was as if the walls themselves had already accepted him. Not as staff, not as furniture, but as something older, heavier. The kind of presence a place absorbs when it owes a man more than it can ever repay. Rios waited until the others had cleared out. Late afternoon, sun bleeding sideways through the long corridor windows, dust catching in the amber light like flecks of memory. The old man was there again. Same corner, different broom, same silence. Rios had told himself he wouldn't ask, that he'd let it be. But curiosity wasn't what pulled him forward. It was something closer to gravity. Not fascination, recognition. He approached slow, like disturbing still water, cleared his throat. "Sir." The old man didn't move. Were you in a unit that doesn't exist? It wasn't a challenge, just a question born from too much wondering. Too many silent glances passed between officers who should have dismissed the man and didn't. Still no reply. But the old man reached into his jacket, slow and deliberate, like a ritual. Pulled out a small black notebook. Nothing on the cover. Worn soft at the corners. No stickers, no stamps, just handed it over without a word. Rios took it gently. He flipped it open. First page, blank. Second page, handwritten, neat. One line, Tide Station, Raptor Ghost, Tier 0. No context. Beneath it, a short list of dates, each written with precision. No names, no places, no outcomes. But the last date hit like a punch to the ribs. Rios had seen it before. Once, in a redacted Cold War study guide tucked deep in naval archives. It had been linked to a failed op off the Kamchatka coast, one whispered about during unofficial briefings. The kind of mission that only got mentioned in cautionary tales, never textbooks. No survivors, no follow-up, just gone. And here it was, scrawled in ballpoint ink. Rios looked up, questions forming, but the old man had already turned away, back to sweeping. No drama, no explanation, just that same quiet presence, now somehow heavier. Rios closed the notebook and handed it back. The old man pocketed it like it was just a list for the grocery store. But something unspoken had passed between them. Not permission, not trust, recognition, and maybe a warning. Tread carefully in places no one will admit exist. Rios was sitting alone in the common room, lights dimmed low, polishing gear he didn't need polished. The base had gone quiet, that rare lull between training evolutions where even the air seemed too tired to move. Footsteps echoed from the hall, steady, unhurried. Then the door creaked open. Chief Morrison stepped in like a storm, trying to stay bottled. "You've been talking to him?" Rios didn't answer right away, just met the man's eyes and nodded once. Morrison sighed, hand drifting to his hip as if searching for something to brace against. "You don't ask about shadows, Rios. You thank them, and you leave them the hell alone." But his voice didn't have bite. Not really. It had weight, the kind that comes from carrying something too long without setting it down. "Who is he?" Rios asked, softer this time. Morrison didn't answer. Not then. Just turned and walked out without a word. An hour later, when the base was sleeping and Rios had almost convinced himself to let it go, his door clicked open again. "Get dressed," Morrison said, "and keep your mouth shut." They walked down to the staff quarters, past the laundry units and gear lockers, to a room that looked like every other. Morrison keyed open a footlocker at the base of his bed. Inside, neatly folded uniforms, a rusted multi-tool, and a single locked tin box. He opened it like it was a grave. Inside lay a black and white photograph, cracked at the corners, edges softened with age. 7 men stood on a beach at night, moonlight casting long shadows over their faces. No ranks, no unit patches, wet sand at their boots, rifles slung low. Rios leaned in. There, second from the left. Younger, leaner, but unmistakable. The eyes gave him away. The janitor, or whatever he really was. Morrison sat on the edge of the bed, voice strained. "My father was a SEAL. Ran into a buzzsaw op in '86. No extraction. They called in a ghost unit, last-ditch stuff." He tapped the photo with a finger that didn't quite stop shaking. "That man, he pulled my old man out, carried him 3 miles through enemy terrain with 2 broken ribs, disappeared before the dust even settled." He looked at Rios then, eyes glassy with something halfway between gratitude and awe. "They say ghosts aren't real, but that man's the reason I exist." Rios couldn't sleep. Not after the photo. Not after Morrison's voice cracked in that way men like him weren't supposed to. Something about seeing the old man younger, boots dug into wet sand, rifle slung like it was part of his arm. It tore the veil off every assumption Rios had carried since he walked into Coronado. He wasn't looking at a janitor anymore. He was staring into the shadows of history, so he did what he wasn't supposed to do. He dug. Not loud, not reckless. Quiet clicks through locked but lazy archive terminals, slipping past permissions he technically didn't have. Search filters adjusted. Keyword limits lifted. Rios didn't look for names. He looked for patterns. Timelines, missing pieces that didn't add up. That's when he found it. Buried in a training doctrine flagged for language localization. A document never meant for wide eyes, translated once, then shelved. Ghostwater Doctrine. No stamp of approval, no formal acknowledgement. Just a brief, directive protocol for Tier 0 units operating without extraction guarantees. His stomach dropped. No extraction. That meant no Plan B. No cavalry. You went in, you completed the mission, or you didn't come back. It was suicide written in bureaucratic ink. The doctrine described operational profiles, ultra-deep insertions, hostile zones, political flashpoints, and one passage stood out, brief, dry, almost an afterthought. Field coordination to be routed through signal, primary asset handler, remote exfil authority, mission contingency architect. Previous deployment record, perfect. Then, one name, signal, Malone. No rank, no first name, no photograph. Rios leaned back, heart thudding. He didn't need a picture. He knew. Knew like you know the ocean's deep even if you've never touched the bottom. The man in the waiting room, the one they ignored, the one sweeping floors in silence, wasn't just some war-worn relic. He was the signal, the man they called when every option was gone, the one who built exits no one else could see. And now, he was here, sitting in a folding chair with a styrofoam cup, as if the weight of history hadn't once rested in his hands. Rios stared at the screen a long time. Legend wasn't the right word. It was too loud. This man had lived beneath legend and kept walking. The ocean never apologizes. During Hell Week, it becomes something closer to an enemy. Indifferent, patient, always pressing. Cold found its way into bone, into breath, into thought. Rios barely felt his limbs anymore. Sand coated his teeth. Muscles trembled not from exertion, but from the betrayal of exhaustion finally catching up. They were running a forced withdrawal drill. Hostile contact. Fog thick enough to choke visibility. Sim rounds popping from speakers, strobe lights mimicking muzzle flashes. Instructors barking from somewhere unseen. The mission was scripted to fail. Most of them knew it. The point was to see who broke formation, who left their own behind to hit the exfil first. Rios had a man down. A dummy weighted with 200 pounds of water bags and gear, playing the part of a wounded teammate. He was dragging him through soft sand while the clock bled out and other recruits sprinted past. No one waited. They had been told this was timed. Points on the board, objectives, not oaths. He didn't leave the body. Didn't flinch when the instructor circled, cold eyes scribbling in notepads. He made the call. The hard one. No man left, even in a scenario rigged for failure. He lost the round. Later, as dusk crept across the compound and the others lounged sore and spent, Rios sat alone near the fencing, back to the wall, knees pulled up, breath still short. He wasn't angry, just tired. A kind of tired that didn't speak, that just sat with you and waited. Footsteps approached, slow, familiar. The old man stopped beside him, crouched low. "You held the line," he said, voice barely louder than the wind. Rios looked up. The man was holding something in his palm. He extended it. The patch, same as before, black stitching, angular eagle, no words, no permission. "You won't wear it," the man said. "You'll earn it by living it, that's what we used to say." Rios took it, careful. He didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. There were no congratulations. No ceremony. Just a silent exchange between one man who had once carried the weight, and another now learning what it meant. Graduation didn't feel like victory. It felt like breathing again after holding your lungs hostage for weeks. The ceremony was all polish and order. Pressed uniforms, gleaming medals, chairs set in perfect rows under a pale blue sky. Flags stirred gently in the wind, and the Navy brass stood like statues, smiling with the practiced ease of men used to ceremony. Rios stood in formation, last in line, his face unreadable. Inside, there was pride, but it was quiet. Earned, not shown. The kind that didn't need applause to know it mattered. His name was called. He stepped forward with a steady gait, boots thudding softly on the platform. Medals were pinned. A silver trident was pressed into his hand. Cameras clicked. A round of applause scattered across the crowd like rainfall, light and obligatory. Officers shook his hand. Their grip was firm, their eyes respectful. They said the right things, called him Operator Rios now, but he kept scanning the seats. The front row was filled with family, commanders, press. Rows behind, recruits and staff. Beyond them, standing near the tree line at the edge of the field, was the figure he was looking for. Malone. No uniform, no seat, just a weathered man in a worn cap and olive jacket, standing alone, hands behind his back, watching. No one else seemed to notice him, but Rios did. Their eyes met. No smile, no salute, just a nod. Slow. Final. The kind of gesture that meant more than any speech. Legacy recognizing legacy. Rios returned it, barely a dip of his chin, but in that movement lived everything unspoken. The dragged dummies, the sand-choked lungs, the patch in his pocket he still hadn't worn. The moment passed. A general stepped forward, offered words about honor, resilience, nation. All true, all earned. But the weight of the ceremony didn't live in those words. It lived in that nod. Because Rios wasn't just graduating. He was being witnessed. And by the only man who truly understood what it meant to serve without ever being seen. The package came with no return address. Just a plain manila envelope, hand-delivered to the team's secure drop box outside Bagram. No one saw who left it. No one admitted to handling it. Rios found it folded neatly between after-action reports and requisition forms like it belonged there. He opened it in silence. Inside, a single sheet of thick paper, yellowed at the edges, folded once. Unfolded, it revealed a list of names, some just last names, some only call signs. A few were crossed out in red, others marked with dates, too clean to be guesses. Below the list, a rough map, not of any one place, but many. Overlaid terrain sketches, continents broken into sectors, each quadrant marked with symbols. Angular shapes, geometric birds, wings bent in the same shape as that old patch he still kept tucked inside his kit bag. At the bottom, a note, typed on a manual machine. The ink faded in places. Find the others. Not all of us made it back, but some of us never stopped serving. No signature, just silence wrapped in paper. Rios stared at the note for a long time. Then he reached into his rucksack, pulled out the old patch, black thread on olive canvas, the one Malone had handed him without a word. He ran a thumb along the edge, the stitching slightly frayed now from dust and movement, but still solid, still waiting. He didn't sew it on, didn't wear it on his vest or sleeve, and instead he pinned it inside his bag. Hidden, where it belonged. Because that patch wasn't about pride, it wasn't about being seen, it was a key. And when the day came, when something felt off, when the mission didn't show up on any official board but still called for boots on ground, he'd know who to look for. They'd wear no insignias, speak no names, show no rank, but they'd have the look. That gravity, that silence. Some heroes never left the fight. They just stepped deeper into the dark, waiting for the ones who could read the map.